Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Total War Warhammer online commentary. In this particular battle, I will be playing the Beastmen, and I'm going to be facing off against the Warriors of Chaos, who have taken position up here in the tree line. So, should be a nice, fun Chaos Cousins matchup here. So, always a good time. So as far as my army composition goes, I actually brought one natural Cygor. In most matchups, I don't like to do this, especially if you are bringing Malagor the Dark Omen. But against Warriors of Chaos, they don't really have that many ways to punish you for bringing a Cygor. They don't have missile troops that can kind of chip away at it, because Cygors, again, they only have 50 armor. So against, crossbowmen or, any type of, artillery that's relatively accurate, they can get punished. But in this matchup, I feel like it's very safe to bring them. On that same note, the Chaos units that do have anti-large and are going to be quite effective against it are, Halberdiers or Dragon Ogres. And Halberdiers are common in this matchup, but they're very slow and they usually get entangled in the front line. And Dragon Ogres, again, are rarely used. And if they are, I feel like, honestly, Minotaurs with great weapons and GOREBOWLs can definitely outclass them. So definitely a safe pick in my opinion. As far as my front line goes, I just have Ungor Spearman herds. These are just essentially fodder because a lot of the Beastmen leadership units like GOREBOWLs and Minotaurs and Cygors are very expensive. So unfortunately, from time to time, you're going to have to compensate by that by bringing these Ungor Spearmans. But hey, on the bright side, they do have anti-large and charge defense, which is pertinent against some Chaos units, so definitely cannot complain. In the secondary line, I was just experimenting a little bit. I had actually just finished playing a few games against Chaos as Beastmen, and something I noticed is that the Chaos players were bringing a lot of Halberdiers because they do have anti-large and armor piercing, which is really good against GOREBOWLs and Minotaurs and the Cav units and all those type of things. So I decided to mix it up a little bit and bring some Bestigors, which do have armor piercing and can kind of fulfill the role that you would traditionally have your Minotaurs doing, and without suffering from anti-large bonuses. So we have two groups of those. We also have Minotaurs with great weapons, which are absolutely excellent against Chaos. They can punish Chaos Lords. They can do very well against Chaos Cav, Chaos Spawn. They're good against Giants and are just a very resilient troop. And in general, the shielded Minotaurs are a pretty good choice in most matchups. But in this particular matchup, obviously, you do not need shields against Chaos because the really only missile unit you might run into would be Marauder Horsemen with the throwing axes. But unfortunately for those guys, they get outclassed severely by these Centaurs here who can just chase them down with their 91 run speed. So you usually don't see those in the Chaos matchup. Also on that same note, I have Malagor the Dark Omen, two GOREBOWLs, as well as the Minotaurs I just mentioned. And over here in the tree line, I do have two Centaurs with great weapons, which are very, very good in this matchup. Or actually, correction, only one, as well as some Chaos Poison Warhounds. In most matchups, I like to bring two of these because I feel like you need at least two groups to kind of overpower units like Demogryph Knights or Grail Knights. But in the Chaos matchup, who doesn't really have the strongest Cav presence, I feel like you don't need much more than this. So as far as my opponent's army composition goes, he has a fairly dynamic army. He has some Chaos Poison Warhounds, which are pretty nice. He also brought some Chaos Knights with Lances, which are very, very strong shot Cav. Personally, I feel like they're very, very overpriced for what you're getting, but regardless, they still are quite a strong unit when you put them out in the battlefield. He has some Forsaken down here, and kind of a mixture of Forsaken and Chaos Marauders, and these guys are great in the Beastmen matchup. A really effective charge from a Forsaken group can absolutely shatter the low-tier front line of the Beastmen, so very, very strong there, and, they do have 58 weapon strength, so even against Minotaurs and those type of things, they're going to do some substantial damage, but thankfully you can see they've taken some damage from the Cygor, who just missed there, unfortunately. He also has Kolek Sun Eater, so definitely the Minotaurs with great weapons will be quite strong against him. He has, it looks like, Chaos Warriors back here, Chaos Warriors with great weapons. And then he also has some Chaos Warriors with halberds, and actually he brought some Chosen with halberds as well. So, like I had speculated, a lot of halberd action going on. So he's spread pretty wide here. So it looks like he's going to try and get a really strong concave and kind of collapse on my more condensed force here. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and see how this goes. So I'm just advancing right up the hill. Again, with Beastmen, they are a fairly aggressive faction, and they do have pretty high move speed across the board. I mean, even these Ungor Spear Herds have 46 move speed at the moment, and that's going to be pretty strong at closing the distance and kind of disallowing this force over here from having an optimal engagement. So we're kind of posturing up against one another. In my Cygor, I summon a second one here, and I have this one here continuing to bombard my opponent. And you can see they've done pretty devastating damage to those Forsaken over there, so I was very happy about that. And at the same time, my opponent is swinging around with his Chaos Poison Warhounds, as well as a group of Forsaken who are very fast. I almost thought those were capped for a second, but they actually do have, let's go ahead and see what the run speed is on those. It is 48, so yeah, that's very, very quick. So he is coming around with the Warhounds, and it looks like he's probably going to envelop this Cygor, which was very, very well played on my opponent's part. And at the same time, we are engaging in the front line with our infantry. You can see the Marauders and the Ungors are going to engage, and the Marauders probably have slightly better combat stats, but these guys, they do come in large numbers and are pretty expendable, so I should be fine there. Also, this Cygor, now that kind of the action was underway, he's going to crush through these low-tier infantry. And also on that same note, he does cause terror. So against low-tier troops, it's usually not a bad idea to send a Cygor in once the fighting begins. Unfortunately for me, my opponent did envelop my Cygor back here with these Chaos Warhounds with poison, and he's also going to get some Forsaken, who with their high weapon strength and the low armor of the Cygor will definitely make short work of him. So very well played on my opponent's part here. On the same time, we kind of invested here in the Cav battle. I pulled my Minotaurs with great weapons, and I also pulled, some of my Poison Warhounds and my Centaurs in here, and we kind of just had this really aggressive trade. But, it might look bad now, but his Chaos Knights with Lances got absolutely devastated. They're down to 20 models now, and I did lose some of my Centaurs, but, they almost cost half of what that group cost. And my Minotaurs with great weapons were also able to get in there with the support of, I believe, a GOREBOWL who's in here, just still fighting. And these Warhounds, of course, here are doing some good work. But Kolek, this is not where he wants to be. These Minotaurs have anti-large, and granted, Kolek isn't an armored soldier, so it's not, the armor piercing isn't as pertinent against him, but you can see he's taking pretty devastating damage right now. But again, Kolek is still always a force to be reckoned with and never to be underestimated. So in the front line, it's going fairly well. I was able to kind of crush the Marauder force here, and now I'm circumventing my forces up into the hill here. You can see that the Bestigors and the Ungors are kind of intermixed with one another, which is the ideal situation. Because if you have these fodder units like the Ungors in here, a lot of the Chaos Warriors who are fairly, I guess I wouldn't say single target damage, but, they're mainly designed for hitting armored targets very hard and taking them down in that respect. They're not going to be very efficient against fodder units. So when you have the Bestigors kind of covered by them, it's going to be a much more cost-effective combat situation for you. So I do have Malagor the Dark Omen in here supporting the troops and also casting Devolve, which is very, very good at routing off low-tier troops because it does provide -8 leadership, which is pretty, that's a lot when you take into account a group like Chaos Marauders. You might only have, 40 or 50 when the battle starts. So Kolek comes in here and he definitely pimp slaps that Cygor right there with his Star Crusher. He's also using the Lord of the Thunder, I think that ability is called. You guys will have to correct me, but he gets some nice devastating damage, and you can see some of those Ungors flying out of there. But again, like I mentioned before, guys, the Cygor has really high weapon strength, so Kolek is forced to retreat into the tree line. Some Chaos Warriors who were kind of involved in this skirmish up here on the hill have come back, and they do have great weapons, so against the Bestigors, they'll do pretty well. But I would say the Bestigors still have slightly better combat stats. You see they have 40 weapon strength to the 38, and then, of course, the Bestigors, I'm trying to get a good tab on them here. Their melee attack's pretty good, but again, the Chaos Warriors are not far behind in regards to their stats. So he is bringing his surviving Lances back here and is running down some of my low-tier troops. And Malagor and, the Ungors he had with him over here do get overrun, so unfortunately I did have to pull him back, but thankfully he didn't get enveloped in any way. This GOREBOWL over here is continuing to fight, and he just used his Potion of Toughness, which is so good. Like, honestly, he's surrounded by Chosen and Kolek, and he's, like, healing through a lot of their damage. And the longer they sit here fighting the GOREBOWL, the better it is for me because I can develop my presence on other parts of the battlefield. So you can see Malagor, unfortunately, isn't able to reunite with his forces before getting ambushed, but he's pretty resilient himself. Granted, he only has 15 armor, but, he's a heroic unit, and he'll be able to survive for quite some time against these halberdiers here. So, and you can see this Cygor does come back, though it's very low health, and these are halberds. I needed some cover for Malagor so I could hopefully squeeze him out of here. And thankfully, I did win this battle on the high ground, and the Beastie Boys are coming back to help their lord, and I should be able to resecure this position with these Bestigors and these GOREBOWLs. You can see that guy just took a nice somersault right into the camera. And then, of course, the second Cygor, I was able to kind of just slip past these Chosen and get him back with his force. So a lot of times in these late-game battles, it's very optimal to just kind of unify your forces and create a Zerg wall because most of your forces are going to be pretty beat up, and their strength, especially when you need to be protecting units like Cygors, will definitely be much more powerful in numbers. So my opponent does have some Marauders coming back from route here who are doing a decent job actually working on these Minotaurs here, and he does have some Poison Warhounds, which are also very good against Minotaurs because any really powerful high stat unit is definitely going to suffer a lot from poison. So he does use the Lord of the Storm there and sap some of my Bestigors, but most of my units are in pretty good shape in regards to their morale because Malagor is here encouraging them, and I do have these two giant Cygors here, which are putting a lot of pressure on my opponent and are definitely crushing some of these Chosen. But, Chosen, again, are such a strong unit with 120 armor, but thankfully I do have the armor piercing here, so it could be much worse. You can see Kolek does have some Chaos Warriors coming from the hills, and a lot of troops coming back from routing, actually. It was definitely, I felt really confident at first, but then I saw all these Chosen and Marauders and kind of really high tier, well, Marauders aren't high tier, but, Chaos soldiers in general are pretty strong, and seeing them come down from the hills is pretty scary. So he does activate the Star Crusher on Kolek and is really pressuring the Cygor and just putting the beat down. And Kolek did finish that other Cygor as well, so that was definitely a very tough circumstance for me. And this guy was starting to get taken down by Kolek, and you can see his leadership is now steady. So that means he's pretty close to routing off. So He does have these Chosen here who are also steady, and they're doing a pretty good job, but what happened here is I did send this GOREBOWL as well as this Cygor onto Kolek, and if Kolek goes down, you know, Chaos is one of those factions that I feel is really, really strongly affected by leadership. So if you're able to take out their leaders, I mean, granted, Chosen have extremely high leadership, and even still at this point in the battle with this many losses, they have, 53 leadership despite all of this. So that's definitely a testament to their fortitude, but the rest of the Chaos troops will not last that long. So you can see this GOREBOWL is on the hunt, and his speed, let's go ahead and take a look at his speed. So he has 56 speed at the moment against Kolek's. Yeah, Kolek just used Foe Seeker, so it's not an accurate reflection of his speed, but this GOREBOWL is pressuring him very hard, and you can see Malagor even gets a swing in there. And if I can get him, you know, running off the battlefield, I'll probably be in pretty good shape, and you can see most of these Forsaken and Chaos troops are pretty much out of the picture, so yeah, that's pretty much game, guys. And all I really had left was Malagor, this GOREBOWL, as well as this Cygor here. And thankfully, these Chosen routed off because they were still, you know, 20-plus models, and they were putting in work on this guy. So, again, the fact that I was able to get Kolek was a big determining factor here because he still had, you know, some infantry here scattered, but I did have some troops coming back from route. You can see these best scores were coming back, so it was a very, very close game and very well played on my opponent's part. He did a good job protecting Kolek for as long as he did. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the breakdown here. So you can see Malagor did okay. Again, he's not designed to rack up kills, but allowing myself to summon that second Cygor was a really, really big deal in that end game there. The GOREBOWLs obviously are the MVPs of the Beastmen roster. I honestly think without GOREBOWLs, the Beastmen would just be like almost an unplayable faction. These guys are such game breakers. I mean, you saw I didn't have anything left other than these guys. They were able to turn the tide against Chosen, against Kolek, and all those troops, so definitely very strong there. The best scores actually did quite good. I was actually relatively impressed with them. Personally, I think in terms of kind of similar tiered units in that same spectrum, like Black Orcs and you know, Chosen are definitely a higher level, but you know, I think Great Swords and Black Orcs are a much more cost-effective unit than Best Scores, but you know, you got to work with what you got. And also, like I mentioned, he did bring several groups of Halberdiers, so they didn't fall victim to that anti-large bonus because he did have the Halberdiers fighting against them. So that was one thing that was nice. As far as the Cav battle goes, I was able to do some substantial shock damage, and I wish I could have shown you guys a little bit more, but the Centaurs with the Poison Warhounds, as well as the Minotaurs with great weapons, who are huge this game, just absolutely punished his Chaos Knights with Lances, so that was really good, but he did use Kolek very effectively, and the mobility of his Forsaken to counter that push, so again, well played there. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that Beastmen game. It was a lot of fun, and definitely have more content coming soon. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.